Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you to add some positive value to your life. Welcome to my virtual living room. I love that little peak of the ocean there behind me. It just helps me feel better. And we're going to be talking about feeling better. I know some of my topics recently are probably making you ask the question, wow, Peggy, aren't you supposed to be about positive encouragement? We're talking about sorrow, loss, and now disappointment. Well, I think it's so important that we learn how to deal with disappointment. Let me start out by telling you a story of about, oh my gosh, almost a decade ago. And believe it or not, I was going for a Hollywood audition. Yes, this was to be on a TV show, and it was called America Now. And it was a type of, they call it a magazine format, where they had short segments, almost like you're flipping through a magazine. And there was somebody that was talking about gardening, somebody else was a pet expert. There was a guy who talked about money. There was a Miss Fix It that would show you how to fix your toilet and your uh, sink and all of that. And then I came on and I was the health and wellness expert. What I should say is that I was auditioning for the role to be the health and wellness expert. And this happened so quickly that I didn't even really have time to worry about it. I got a call from somebody that had been listening to my radio segments on the ABC radio network, all about health and wellness. And they said, we're looking for someone that can do what you're doing on the radio on TV. So why don't you come in for an audition? And I did the audition. I came home and I was so excited. And I remember going over to visit my mom and telling her about this whirlwind that had just happened. And I came in very upbeat. I had just driven back from LA, which is about an hour, a little bit more than an hour from where my mom was living at the time. And I said, oh my gosh, mom, can you believe it? I actually had a Hollywood audition. Now, of course, this was before I realized of all the things that go on in Hollywood. And I will say that at least in the industry of this, the magazine type of show, it was not all of those bad things that we hear about. However, the point is that when I told my mom and how excited I was, I had a big smile on my face and my energy was up, and her face just fell flat. She just had big eyes and she went like this. And I said, oh my gosh, mom, what's wrong? And she said, what if you don't get it? Okay. My mom came from a generation and an upbringing where you didn't want to hope for too many things because you might not get it. And you don't want to be disappointed. What if you're disappointed? So I'm going to talk about that. But before I do, I want to tell you my response. And I said, Mom, between now and when I hear from them, at least I'm going to enjoy it. Why would I allow the potential of being disappointed to disappoint me now in the present moment? Why not enjoy all of the excitement, the thrill, the fact that I actually went for an audition? And even then, I was realizing that I had no control over the results of that audition. It was not up to me to select who was going to be on that show. They either wanted somebody of my age and appearance and energy and knowledge and background, or they didn't. If they wanted a man of a different age group with a different appearance, then they would have chosen and they will choose that man. There's nothing that I could do to change the outcome after I gave it my all. So I completely understood. That was my mom's gesture of love to try to protect her daughter from the disappointments of life. And any parent understands that you don't want your children to have to suffer disappointment. Even hearing that word, it's like a heavy word, kind of a burden. So let me ask you, why do you think disappointment is something that so many people try to avoid? Or maybe I'm off base here. Maybe it's not as common anymore, but it seems to me that many people are given the message that you should maybe not try at all because you might be disappointed if it doesn't work out the way you want it to. And I'll say there's some truth to that statement, because if you don't try, if you don't go after something, if you don't desire something, then you somewhat, and I'm going to say somewhat because I have a different perspective on this, somewhat you're eliminating that possibility of being disappointed. Or are you? Let's dig a little deeper into this, and then I have a couple of how-tos for you. So think about in our society, the notion over the last decades or so that everybody's a winner. There's no losers. And we see this in sports teams, especially with younger children, where the score is not even kept in some of these. And you may think that's a good thing, that there's too much of a focus being placed on winning. So there's that. All right. I am a little bit more of the approach and the notion that there are people who win and there are people who don't win. There are people who lose out on whatever it was. Let me go back a little bit about this audition for the Hollywood audition for this part on the TV show. They told me at the audition that they were rushing into production and they needed to hire somebody within 2 weeks. And that if it was going to be me, I would hear back from them right away to make sure that I had hair, wardrobe, scripts, and all of that ready. Well, a week went by. 2 weeks went by, 3 weeks went by. In the meantime, I was holding my health and wellness retreats and doing what I loved. And that's all I really could do other than worry. But the worrying wasn't going to bring me any closer to a decision. So I tried to put that out of my mind. And I focused on the fact that I was actually called to audition for this show. And nobody could take that away from me. In fact, even if I didn't get on that show, no one could take away my experience, my joy of teaching, my passion for what I am involved in. No one, no audition, no producer has the power of doing that. And I really focused on that, it was fun. And very few people are in that position where they might even be considered for this kind of a role. And so I was focusing on that and enjoying that. Was there a part of me that was a little bit on pins and needles and it was kind of nerve-wracking? Absolutely, because this was a paid gig and this would allow me to get my message out to more people, my message of natural health and healing and a healthy lifestyle. So I wanted to have that kind of platform. So there was a part of me that was checking the phone and thinking, are they going to call me or not? But after about 4 weeks went by, I thought, well, I guess I wasn't selected. And I just focused my attention elsewhere. Was I disappointed? Yes, I was. Of course, I was disappointed. Disappointment is not something we need to avoid. Disappointment, to me, is an example and a witness, and it's actually proof that there is something that we care about. And I think that's beautiful and wonderful. It's awesome that I cared enough, that I gave it my all on this audition, that I wanted to share with people my energy, my ideas, my very much my living swell approach for keeping your head above the waves in these stormy seas. Was I disappointed that that possibility might not be available to me on a bigger platform? Absolutely, I was. But I was disappointed because it was something that was important to me. And I could celebrate and embrace and acknowledge that fact that this is something that's important in my life. And I developed another saying and another outlook, which is there's always another way and I'm going to find it. If they don't want me on this TV show, I'll do a YouTube channel. I'll do my in-person events. I'll do a blog. I'll do a podcast. I'll send out a newsletter. There's always another way. It doesn't just have to be the TV show. And so I encouraged myself in that way, all the while still being on pins and needles and acknowledging that, yes, indeed, I was experiencing disappointment. It didn't kill me. I didn't allow it to incapacitate me. And I didn't make that mean that something was wrong with me. Not at all, because I am who I am. My message is what it is. My passions and experience and all of that stands for itself. And if that's not what they were looking for, I can't help them. So I encouraged myself with those phrases all along those many weeks when I didn't hear back from them. If I had been invited to another, well, let's bring it up to speed, shall we? After about 5 weeks, I did get a call back and they said, the senior producers want to meet with you. And I thought, okay, here we go again, a second audition. My sister has been in community theater for a long time, and she knows all about, as a director, and as an actress about callbacks. And sometimes they narrow the field and they're still deciding, or even in a job interview, right? You get a call back and you're like, I don't know if this is the final thing or not. So I go in for the second audition, and it turns out it was not an audition at all. It was a job offer. I actually got the job on this TV show called America Now. It lasted, the show itself, 3 or 4 years, and then it was replaced by some sort of reality show. And it was so much fun sharing my tips and resources and remedies, much like I do here, for a wider audience. And I absolutely loved it, and I got paid for it. It was very grueling because I had to drive to Los Angeles. I had a wonderful producer, a person of faith. Every single person that I worked with in Hollywood on this TV show, they were hardworking, they were down to earth people. It was not like what you hear that goes on. I'm sure that did go on, maybe in different areas, but the producers that were producing my segments were A-OK, but it was very grueling. We would shoot for about 2 hours to get 2 minutes of content. And it's completely different from what I do here, which I come live. I might have a couple of notes that I, handwrite out, but there's nothing that's overly scripted or produced or edited, because I like to just be authentic and vulnerable. And sometimes I make mistakes and I lose my place and I lose my train of thought. I might say something that I wish I had said differently or not said at all, but that's okay. This is like, we're friends here talking. So I was elated that I got this gig. And even if I hadn't have gotten it, I still was standing on those other truths that I was telling you about, and no one could take that away from me. My mom was really happy as well. And I did share with her my concern about her concern of trying to protect me from being disappointed, and how disappointment is not fatal. It's not lethal, especially when we have these tips. So to kind of refresh, I think our society puts a lot of pressure on trying to avoid disappointment, as though you somehow failed. No, it's not the case. Sometimes you're going to get that job. Sometimes maybe you put in an offer on a house and someone else got it. Maybe you were, trying to sell something and the person said they'd show up and they didn't, and then you were disappointed. It's just a part of life, whether we have trivial disappointments or massive disappointments. Maybe somebody you wanted to marry got married to someone else. So yes, there are disappointments that shake us to our core, and there are others that are a little more surface that we can work through more easily. The bigger point is that I don't want these disappointments to prevent you from continuing to go after your goals and dreams and whatever it is that you're seeking. So you have to make sure that the thing that you're searching or desiring, like I wanted that role on the show, you have to be sure that that's not a need that you require in order to have a fulfilling life. I was able and willing to share my message in another way, even if I didn't get that job and the money that went along with it. So although it would be a thrilling experience, and I would be disappointed, of course, I wasn't going to allow that to shape me, to have that be my own identity. There would be many other things in my life. Let me give you another quick one. When I was in grad school, and because I'm a perfectionist, I was striving for all straight A's, and I got a B+ on a research paper. So I made an appointment with the professor to ask him, why did I get a B+? What was wrong so I can do better next time? I was hoping he would change the grade, but it wasn't the real reason. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to get a B+ next time. So I set up an appointment with him, and I remember riding my bike to class, to my appointment, and I looked outside back in the day when you had blue skies before they got sprayed with all the milky aerosols. And I looked at that blue sky and I thought, regardless of what happens in this meeting, when I come out of that meeting, I'm going to enjoy this blue sky. Oh my gosh, I was probably 24 years old. I was a young adult. And I remember very clearly thinking, I am not going to allow disappointment to take me under. So I had the meeting with the professor. He decided to keep the paper and look it over a little more in detail and asked me to come back in a few days. And of course, again, I was on pins and needles, but I kept thinking, regardless of what the professor thinks, I know that I did the best job I could. I know that it was well researched, well expressed, well written, footnotes, resources, and I am happy with my performance unless there's something he can show me that where I didn't meet the mark. And that's why I'm asking. So I went back a couple of days, the blue sky, I'm breathing it in, saying, regardless of what happens, life goes on. I'll get through this. I'm going to enjoy that blue sky. And believe it or not, he changed the grade to an A minus. And I believe that he realized that the reason he gave me a B plus is not because of the quality of my work, but because of my argument in the paper. The position I took was one of conservative, and he was quite liberal. And I think he had to acknowledge that. And to his credit, he did acknowledge it. And I did get my A and I did get my straight A's. That's just how I roll, friends. I am a perfectionist. I've done videos about perfectionism as well, because it can strangle you. And if that's something that you deal with, or maybe you want to be more of a perfectionist to see how that impacts your life, please study the additional episodes that I have for you all about perfectionism. So my takeaways are this. Number one, it's okay to be disappointed. Let's not try to prevent that. That prevents you from living, because what happens if you don't want to be disappointed? I'll tell you exactly how to do it. I've got a powerful, surefire way that you'll never be disappointed again. Are you ready? Don't try, don't desire, don't have any goals, don't wish, don't hope, don't dream. There, I fixed it for you. No disappointments. But then you also don't have any excitement in your life. You're not going after your goals. So let's acknowledge that, yeah, the disappointments sting, but let's not allow them to be tied around our ankles to pull us underwater. So it's okay to be disappointed. Takeaway number two, it means that you valued something of importance. You should applaud that. You should congratulate yourself that there's something in your life that you gave meaning and that you wanted to go after. I think that's fantastic. And takeaway number three, you tried in some manner. You tried, you hoped, you wished, you prayed. That was all a part of being a part of life. So let's celebrate that as well. Don't let these disappointments stop you from trying again. Practice makes perfect. And I tell myself, you know what? I've gotten through these disappointments before, and I know I will get through it again. It's almost like a wound. If you have a paper cut or whatever you might experience, and you know that there will necessarily be time for this wound to heal. So I will remind myself of past disappointments and how I've put them in their proper place. And then I have also, been able to move ahead. And resigning yourself to I'm not going to try because I don't want to be disappointed. You're 100% assured of disappointing yourself. And I think disappointing yourself is probably the hardest of all. I've got videos on this channel about keeping promises to yourself, about telling yourself the truth. So it's all about encouragement that you can get through this. And the final point that I want to leave with you is this. I didn't make it up, but I heard it and I love it. So I'm going to share it with you. God's rejection is God's protection. I love that. So that wasn't meant to be. Okay. Let's say, for example, that I didn't get that Hollywood audition and I wasn't on that TV show. Well, imagine that loss or disappointment might have caused some other door to open, or maybe that would have prevented me from some kind of injury or illness, on the set. So you never know the road not taken. I don't want to diminish the feelings of disappointment because I think they're I don't think they are. They are. They're valid. All emotions are valid. As I've spoken on this channel before, we walk that fine line of expressing the emotions, feeling the emotions, releasing the emotions, working through them without allowing them to pull us under. Thank you, everybody, for being on board. It is my true pleasure to share with you the tips and techniques that I've developed over my years here in this beautiful life to help you keep your head above the waves whenever you experience those stormy seas. Thanks for being on board, and I look forward to seeing you in an upcoming broadcast.